This year was really special. We had to cancel for 2 years in a row because of COVID concerns, and this year it really just felt like, I don't know, like it was better. The attendance was like maybe 10 or 15% better than pre-pandemic levels. We have 1,500 volunteer shifts that we fill, and they filled up in better than ever actually. And so it was this really special, like coming back. Like there was better boats. The vibe was great. I describe my role as the executive director is I'm kind of like the hood ornament of the Wooden Boat Festival, in that like I'm shiny and in front, but like I don't really have a functional purpose until like someone's really mad and then someone calls my phone. And I never got the bad phone call, like for whatever reason. Everyone was in a really happy vibe. So come next year if you missed this one, because this was a really good one. And I think it's going to keep rolling that way. Race to Alaska happened again after well, it's part of us. We started the Race to Alaska, and the idea was actually born out of the beer tent in the 2013 Wooden Boat Festival. And that I had this bad idea, and I was actually, there was a table of people talking about, you saw the boats I like and how I vacation in like this kind of, I call it feral boating, which is just like you go out there, you take away as much things as possible, you can get as close to the experience as possible. And there's some other people like-minded who basically like sailing or like beach cruising, like rowboat camping. And we were sitting around having a beer, wondering how we could get more people to care about and like engage in that. And I basically just hated everyone's idea. And it was like, let's see how much trash we can pick up. Like, you know, it's great that, but no one's gonna care. And at some point I was just like, I don't know, let's just see. Like, what if we just got $10,000 and nailed it to a tree in Alaska and said, go get it. And everyone looked at me kind of like you're looking at me. But like something felt right about it from the showbiz side of things. So we launched Race to Alaska. We didn't have the $10,000. And it was also like the way you're looking at me now, sort of the skeptical, like, what are you talking about? Imagine my board of directors, my 22 bosses that I work for, where I showed up and like, I've got this idea and it's going to be awesome. And we're going to say, we're going to start $10,000 in the hole. And we're going to take away all the safety equipment, and we're not going to help people, and we're going to put them in very risky situations. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Who's with me? But they came along, and this was the 7th Race to Alaska. I think we can get into a little bit later. But anyway, this is we'll get back to the Race to Alaska. But that's the creation story of how it started. And we actually launched Race to Alaska I wrote a website. I hired my buddy Zach Carver, who I knew through the Center for Wooden Boats, who just got into film school, to start like our first promo video. And then we just advertised it, knowing that we would figure out how to run the Race to Alaska in the next 9 months, which we did, luckily.
You can explain that picture a little more, or you come back to it?
No, I'll explain. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate. I only not just need a hype man. I need sort of a detail guy. So I appreciate that. This was from 2017. This was Team Sail Like a Girl, who all female crew who won it, and all female crew who won it in a year where it was also the first monohull to win the race. So the first 2 races have been won exclusively by multi-hulls. One was a super fast beach cat that did it just under 4 days, and they didn't sleep, and they almost died a number of times. So everyone had kind of written off the races. It's just stupid. It's a multi-hull race, and if you love them or hate them, like they're pretty cool and they go fast. This was a Melges 32 that they campaigned and beat a number of multi-hulls in a pretty challenging year. So that was pretty fun and it was like thematically in the same year as like the Me Too movement was really like coming to full crest. So it felt like we're part of the fight. It's great. Anyway, we'll get back to Race to Alaska. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Am I going to go the right way? I am. 48 North magazine became part of the Northwest Maritime Center family in 2018. I think it was 2018. And the story there was, I grew up reading 48 North. I'm sure a lot of you like read 48 North or have. And the owners who started it, kind of like, they were kind of just done with it. And it wasn't a great, it was a bad business at that point. And they were just kind of, they were going to let it go away. And they ended up donating it to us because we just felt like it was such an important part of this community, this regional community of boaters. And we felt like we should give it a chance. And we learned through the Race to Alaska that a lot of what we can do as an organization is really expand the mission. God, I'm so dumb. Back on the first slide, I should have told you about our mission, which is basically connecting people to the sea in a lot of different ways, whether you're old or young. And what we learned through the Race to Alaska is that it's not just necessarily like getting people in boats that we can do that. We can actually inspire people to get in boats through storytelling and through media. And Race to Alaska made us learn that lesson. And that's why 48 North looked at this, was because of Race to Alaska. We looked at 48 North, we were like, oh, we can probably do a better job of inspiring people, and we can turn this business around. I'm happy to say that as of last year, it's finally a going concern business. It's a profit center inside of a nonprofit, which, you know, nonprofits are a tax status, not a business strategy. So this is part of the things that help us create the revenue we need to create the programs that we do. The right way. This is some of our newer projects. These are our existing campuses. This is a recent totem pole we were given by the Jamestown Slalom Tribe as part of our partnership that we work together. And then in a leap of faith of logic, we purchased the Swan Hotel across the street from us just back in January. And you're like, Jake, what the hell does a hotel have to do with boats? Thank you. Yeah. Swan Hotel is this building and some other buildings. And I would say that's the same thing I asked when the owners came to me and said, hey, we're going to sell the hotel. We think you should buy it. And I laughed at them and thought it was a silly idea. Again, my board of directors is very smart. And they're like, actually, this is a really good idea. And here's why. That it's the only piece of property that is privately owned that's like congruent with our piece of property. We're growing by leaps and bounds. We know we're going to need more space. And as Brian knows, classes that you can sell hardly ever make any money on their own. And so you're always limited by this idea of like, well, how many classes can we afford to give? How many classes can we support? And this is a going concern business, and that's a great, has anyone ever stayed in the Swan Hotel? Thanks, Mom. It's a great little hotel, and it's a real business, and we bought it at a fair price. And now we're kind of tweaking some of our programs to make them more stay and learn programs. So if we pair something that classes are kind of like a lost leader, but we never had anything to make it back on. So now we have the room nights that we can actually pair with those. And it's an early experiment. It's a weird thing to merge a hospitality industry with a do-gooder nonprofit, but it's working. We were able to keep all the employees too, so they just came over and they just get a different paycheck now. I mean, same paycheck, different logo line. This is a new building that's in the works, but we don't have it yet. We leased, same time we bought the Swan, we leased this because the piece of property that we knew we were going to need more space. Nothing on that yet, but like we're looking at expanding some classroom space there. And we'll get into the programs and you'll understand why.
Was I seeing solar on top of your building now on the right?
Yeah, we got I can't remember how much solar details. Solar. We got solar.
Okay. Thank you.
This is just because you're all boaters. We got the coolest boat donated to us last year, and it's Paul Gartside design custom. He was in wooden boat like when it was built 10 years ago. It's cold molded, built by Ben Jesperson. It sails like an absolute dream, and we're going to start doing classes on it, some cruising classes and things, because it's just too pretty not to share. Especially like this is the interior. Come on, come on. Don't you want to go? I want to go sailing on that. That's really good. You know, I mean, I know I'm like feral boating, but come on, that's pretty good. Incredible.
You get to take that on executive trips.
I have yet to be allowed to take it out. So they saw my boat and they saw this. They're like, yeah, you're going to need a class.
What are they pulling with those oars?
I think maybe there's their dinghy. It's not a Race to Alaska. Those are big.
Those are big oars.
I don't know. I don't think we have those. This was a picture from the wooden boat. This is the Neil Rabinovitz picture.
Sidetrack.
That I totally copied. Anyway, so if you want to go sailing on a lovely boat and you want to take a class or you want to come for a boat ride, let me know. It's pretty amazing. One of the things we have is a ship skills simulator. So imagine a boat simulator, a flight simulator, but you only do like 6 miles an hour. But we have basically boat models. There's only about 4 of these on the West Coast, I think. Now I'm losing track, but it's all IMO certified gauges, and we have this ability where they can either do actual radar stuff. It's in a sort of the top tower, and we can track the ferry going by or shipping traffic, or the screens come up, and we do classes for everyone from like Puget Sound pilots come and train on it. So on the recreational boating, we've done like radar classes, and we'll do those. I think they're just putting together the class schedule for next year. But it's one of those great opportunities for people to learn how to use their radar before they need to use their radar, and in a way that, we can pause the exercise, or we can turn the sunlight on all of a sudden, so you can check to make sure you're in the right direction. And it's really been, we do night navigation classes on it in the past, so it's another great. Virtual shipyards are way cheaper than actual shipyards.
Which building is that in, Jay?
It's in the, I always have to think which building I work in. It's in the red building. It's in the one with the kind of, it's got like an observation tower. It's at the top.
Those
Yes.
classes are for general public.
General public, yep. We put 7th graders in there as part of the school programs that we do. It's a really robust piece of equipment. It's pretty cool. And it's a rare, I don't know of another place that's using it for recreation. So we might be the only one. Here's one of the, this is from earlier this spring. But it's a great, if radar is a great class to come take. The mainstay of how we lose all of our money. So we do all the stuff that makes money, so we can do stuff that loses money. I tell my program director every year, is like, we're going to make as much money as we can, so you can lose as much money as you can and make our program successful. We have a long and robust partnership with our regional schools. Jefferson County is a weird county that's like starts at Port Townsend and it goes to the Pacific Ocean, and it goes through. It's mostly national park, actually. So our community, it's spread out. It's rural, but we have students who come, and every single 7th grader in our county goes through either a 1 or 2 week maritime program in 7th grade, where they come and the school bus drops them off, and our instructors teach alongside of their teachers, and we basically help their teachers retool their class through a place-based maritime centric methodology. So it's not like a field trip, like it's not like just fun, but like, so math class, they're doing time, speed, distance tables, time, speed, distance equations on like charts at Port Townsend Bay, and then they go out in replicas of like Captain Cook's, like longboats, like outward bound, like open boats. And they'll learn how to row in PE class, learn how to sail in PE class, but they'll navigate to the plan they came up with in math class. And then they'll come back in and they'll learn the history of that chart, so the charting exercise. They build a boat every year. In the end, there's this big community celebration. It's the coolest thing. And it's cool because we also work with our local marine trades, and we do these like there is a field trip component. We go and we do kind of like industry awareness trips. So they're going to the sail off, or the riggers, or the carpenter, the shipwrights, and they're learning about the things that are, 20% of our economy in Port Townsend, Jefferson County, is related to the marine trades and the sea. So part of this is about, it's almost like citizenship class for 7th graders, because they're learning about their community, and they're also learning about potential paths for them to pursue in the future. It's a great program. I love it. So discipline goes like down. Teachers get re-inspired. Like, it's great. We also do some targeted population programs. So like our Girls Boat Project is a middle school program. Actually, this changes. Now it's just a youth boat project because they want to include gender non-binary folks. But it has been a female space that has female middle school students, or female identifying middle school students, being taught by female shipwrights or mariners. So they're learning basic skills. They're mostly in the shop. They build horrible looking boats, not because their skills are bad, because they're 7th graders and the designs are ugly. But like, it's not the point, right? The point is actually just building the skills and coming together and gaining confidence. And Really proud of, like, a lot of these young women have gone on to pursue, like, further pursue trade and careers at sea. We have a program that I'm also very proud about. It's called Real World Readiness, which is as hard to say as you think it is. We work with our court system, and it's kind of like Homeport a little bit, I think. Homeport still exists? No. Dang it.
Yeah.
It's too bad. Well,
Yeah.
the idea is it's an alternative sentencing program, and it's turning into a program where it's youth of opportunity. So kids are starting to head down the wrong path. We actually give them a paid internship. They come and they learn boat building skills. They help maintenance the fleet. But a lot of them are actually just learning job skills. Like, there's a lot of times their families don't have employment in their family system. And we pay them, we teach them skills, and then we do mock interviews, and like we do like some real, we have a non-recidivism rate. So 86% of the people that go through this program have not reoffended in 4 years, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
The other things I love are like the stories of the real wins where students from this go on and get inspired. And my favorite is this kid. He now works down the street. He's a travel lift operator now at the local boatyard. But he started like, he was in trouble, and his family was living in his car and in a car, and they had like, his paycheck was the first paycheck they've seen in a long time. And they used that paycheck. I always cry at this part. They used that paycheck to get into an apartment. He re-enrolled in school. He actually enrolled in the next program I'll tell you about. The mock interview turned into a real interview, and the business just hired him. And now he's worked through the boatyard. He's run the travel. It's like a 22-year-old. It's really good work. It's powerful stuff. You think about what do we do and why do we do it? It's this medium. We have the saying that the sea is the most powerful teacher we know. It's totally true. Changes lives. Something we started in partnership. It's kind of the pinnacle. So a lot of our young. We also do summer camps, and we also do grade school programs, and schools come in from all over. We work with a couple different, we've started a maritime skills center. So that's like a half-day, year-round program for students who both want high school credit and they want to get some of the certifications that would be necessary to work at sea. And so this is what school looks like sometimes for some of our high school students. And students come from like, some of them driving, we have somebody from Gig Harbor right now that's driving up. We've had students ride the ferry over from Coopville so they can enroll. It's a pretty small program. It's about 20 people. We're thinking about adding it. It's a vessel operation. So it's specifically about students who are interested in jobs at sea. And I don't have these pictures, but I just saw the instructor just pinged, this is her 4th year, and she just pinged all the past graduates and told them, like, take a picture of where you're at, where you're working right now. We got pictures of all over the world, from engine rooms and the wheelhouse, and from ferries and cruise ships, and it was pretty cool. One kid's in Cal Maritime right now studying to be in the oceanography department, but he did such a good job in sort of learning navigation. He's helping out like the deck department, the deck program. He's helping them get through their navigation exams. So it's a thing to be proud of for me for sure. Another thing that we acquired or adopted, this is in 2019. You guys know the Sailor Sea Expeditions program? It's a vessel-based marine science. It was a nonprofit for about 20 years. And we kind of decided in 2019 it would be stronger as part of the Northwest Maritime Center. So we adopted them. And they use the Carlin, which is Camp Forwind's boat, which I love as a boat owner. You all know this. The cheapest way to be on the water is by using someone else's boat. And so we lease it. We lease it from Camp Forwinds in the shoulder seasons. They use it in the summer, and it's a great way to maximize utilizing a really cool boat. But this one will go into the school. We'll help the students learn about, again, it's kind of middle school, 5th grade to 8th grade usually. It's learning about science. So we go in and talk about the scientific method. We help the students design an experiment. We then help the students design a voyage, usually it's 3 to 5 days, to do the research to support the experiment they designed. And then they go out and do the voyage to sail around and have a great time. And sometimes they're right, and sometimes they learn that, you know, a successful experiment can mean you've got your hypothesis totally wrong. So that's a great one. And that's one that I think we've done programs at a Bellingham before. I can't remember. So this is the worst slide ever. So what I would encourage you to do is not pay attention to the little words, but I try to, like, the most challenging thing for me, and I've been doing this job for a dozen years now, is really like talk about what we do succinctly. And I think the closest I can come is kind of like my 1-sentence explanation of this. So this is just like there are these spectrums of youth to adults, from casual people who just want to come to our beach and throw rocks in the water, to like, we train Port Townsend pilots at our facility. Basically, like, our basic premise is that there is, if you're interested in the water at all, you can come to the, we also do boat building classes. I forgot to tell you that. We also have a marine thrift store. I forgot to talk about that too. If you're interested in the water at all, or interested in getting involved in water, if you want to learn how to sail, if you want to become a professional mariner, there's a place where you can start, and then there's a place you can go to, and it's all kind of inside the Maritime Center family of programs. And there are a lot of places that do a piece of what we do. Some do it really well. I don't think there's any other organization that kind of puts it all under one roof, from festivals to adventure races, and then tries to create a journey for people through that if they want. So in a nutshell, and the messiest slide ever, that's what the Maritime Center is. I wanted to talk specifically, sorry.
And do you want to mention the library?
I always see, the problem with my job is I will always forget something. Yes, I do want to mention the library. It is quite nice. Part of our campus is a maritime library that's part of the public library system. So it's a real weird thing. They don't pay us to be a library. We pay them to be a library. But as you can go in, you can with the library card, and it's a collection of about 6,000 books. Some of them are really rare. I think we have the second edition of Chapman's, which I think is pretty cool. We have charts. We have paper charts. We have all the paper charts in the world. They're out of date at this point. But we can come in. If you want to look at the harbor approach to Bora Bora, you can do that in our library. There's models and ship models in there. It's pretty cool. It's a great spot. Thank you.
And where's that located?
It's at the Maritime Center, the yellow building, second floor. There's also community spaces. I'm trying to think what else I forgot to tell you about stuff. I'm sure.
So could you go into the library, the Bellingham library card, and check out a book?
Maybe. Big picture guy. I'm the big picture guy. I can look on that for you if you want.
Karen's got one.
You might even be able to like reserve it, have it like there's interlibrary loans that people come down and pick books from the shelves a lot too. They'll give you a card right there.
Jefferson Library card.
Wow. Even if you don't live in Jefferson County? Huh. We'll let anybody check out books. Why do we have a card? She's great.
Karen has one too.
Bring my wheelbarrow.
Great. You just borrow hers. You don't even need your own. Who checks?
Okay, Laura, she'll get it.
Just go in when no one's looking and take the book. It's fine. No rules. That's Library to Alaska in there. Right. One of our new big projects, probably our biggest news project, is we're working to create a standalone maritime high school in the Highline School District. So it's just south of Seattle. And basically, it's based on all the stuff we've been doing with schools and like building this sort of pipeline of community programs and middle school programs into our high school program. The Port of Seattle and the maritime industry in general have been really looking at how do we create a generation, the next generation of maritime. Like if you try to get your outboard worked on or get your boat worked on, you know how very rare these individuals are at this point. And especially in vessels, people operating vessels. If you've tried to ride a ferry recently, I guess maybe you don't around here as much as I do, but like it's pain. Like there's a real staffing shortage that they've been predicting for a while. They've been calling it the silver tsunami of people retiring out, not people coming back in. So they came up, Port of Seattle came up and said, "Oh, this is amazing what you're doing. We have this idea to start a high school." I was like, "That's a great idea. Let's help." So there is a school district south of Seattle called Highline School District, and you may or may not have heard of a project of theirs called Aviation High School, which is right on Boeing Field and basically using the model that kind of like, you know, it doesn't really matter what, as long as it's of the place. And certainly aviation is an industry that's really relevant to Seattle, as is maritime industry. And if you can create a contextual learning with that sort of sense of place, it's one of those things that it's the revolution in education that's like as obvious as it is revolutionary, that if students learn better when they're doing stuff, and they learn better when the stuff that they're doing is related to the community they're from. So that's the two things that has going for it. And it's what we started to replicate at Maritime High School. With the other sort of bent is that there's this real weird thing where Maritime High School is located within 5,000 jobs, maritime sector jobs, within like a 4-mile radius. It's right on the Duwamish River, basically. Those jobs are 80% held by white dudes, and the Highline School District is 80% students of color. So when you think about, like, there's a shortage, there's a wealth gap, there's opportunity. Why don't we turn these two problems into a solution? And so that's what it's a student-centered, equity-driven maritime focus. So basically the goal is to help diversify the maritime industry by creating opportunities and inroads into that industry for communities that really haven't been invited to play in that industry before. So it's in its second year. Our job is showing up because public schools don't like owning boats, and they don't like shop classes that much. And they sometimes get too locked into like standards that they don't really know the maritime industry. So our job is to show up and do all that stuff. We're actually helping, we've got about 100 different industry partners that are helping inform the curriculum to make sure that not only is the curriculum meeting all the state standards for graduation and stuff, but it's actually relevant to the jobs that the students might get if they want. And then we're raising a bunch of money to make sure it happens, because starting up a school is an expensive thing, and we don't, the kind of education that we're trying to create doesn't fit in the standard sort of state school funding model. So that's what we're all doing. And kind of the idea, so we convened, we came up with the idea in 2019. We actually opened the school in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, which was super fast. So we started, the basic idea is eventually it'll grow to 400 students, but we're starting with one class at a time. So last year we had a total of 36 students in a high school. And then this year we added the next class, which is about 50. And we'll keep recruiting until, so we're pioneering this education as we go. But it's basically that same kind of learning I've been talking about this whole presentation, which starts with just exposure and getting deeper, but you're learning math by you're learning about how a diesel engine works, or you're learning chemistry, but you're learning how a diesel engine works, but you're also learning about all the materials that go into it, have the science behind it, the history of diesel engines, how diesel engines and steam power changed the geography or of human travel through Puget Sound. It's all based in that. It's a really intricate way to teach, but it's really cool. It's a really fun thing to be a part of. And the idea, so they're sophomores this year, they'll go into junior year and do a lot of workplace learning. So they're going to be in mentorships and internships. And the idea is kind of, the motto is like, ready for college, ready for sea, right? So it doesn't really matter which direction they go, that they will be equally qualified to do both. So it's not specifically a trade school. It's college prep plus, I guess, is what you might say. And this is kind of what school looks like. You know, we took them out on the Duwamish there. This is some really bad pictures. I apologize. Here they're learning to splice. They're on the water a lot. They've built canoes. They're growing tilapia in this sort of permaculture tube where they're growing tilapia and lettuce in the same sort of water flow to learn about conservation as well as ecology, as well as sustainable systems. They're selling the tilapia. They started a student-run company. Senator Patty Murray visited recently, and one of these newly minted sophomores declared himself the CFO of this company and talked about their business plan. I was like, this is an impressive kid, actually, because, you know, Patty Murray's not intimidating, but she's a senator. That's like a thing. Anyway, that's Maritime High School in a nutshell. Yes?
Who develops your curriculum?
We have smart people for that. We have 4 of our education staff that are based out of Seattle, and they're working alongside of, I think there's now 7 school teachers so it's an official public school. We're just there as sort of the booster club and the sort of the backup band. Yeah.
How you doing for global warming, carbon? Because all of our diesel engines throughout the harbor are rapidly becoming subjects of evil, whether it's the local county executive or Inslee or Joe Biden. So how are you going to integrate the global warming and going to hydrogen and methane and all that sort of stuff for these new students? Because they're going to be in it.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not, whether we like it or not.
Well,
it's coming.
I'd say the type of learning, the sort of project-based and inquiry-based learning, is really what I've seen it do in doing the tours of other facilities that do it in other, like aviation high school. you create really curious students they're used to solving problems. They're used to like asking hard questions, solving problems, and then have this incredible poise about presenting about it and collaborate. It's so I don't know specifically how to answer that, Bob, in terms of we're not creating a carbon chewing up hydrogen cell at a high school level. But I think what we are doing is creating an awareness and sort of the habits and behaviors where it would not surprise me if someone who graduates from this high school goes on to change the world. Yeah.
Cool.
Before we go on to the other stuff, there's one more. I know people always want to talk about Race to Alaska. I always want to talk about the Race to Alaska, but it's a totally different energy than this stuff. Is there anything about education? Brian, did I get your questions about how we work with schools? Is that?
Yeah, I think the last time I heard you talk about this was years ago at boat show. So certainly probably expanded.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have more questions, but I don't think they're appropriate.
Are they dirty?
Darn.
Because Bob was game there for a second. I will. There are other. So this Maritime High School, I think it's really interesting. It is creating other conversations around kind of inland Washington. They're looking at something similar in Tacoma. I've heard they're looking at something similar in Gig Harbor. So we're certainly game to help in those too. So if there's interest, we'd be happy to have a conversation about how we might support. Yeah. Okay, moving on to fun stuff. Not that that's not fun. It's just, this is less serious. Just because it's fun to talk about the Race to Alaska and you're all a bunch of boaters, I figured I'd talk about this year's Race to Alaska a little bit. Did anyone follow this year's Race to Alaska?
Oh, yeah.
A little bit?
After
Okay.
the first day.
Yeah, so for those who are less familiar with the Race to Alaska, the rules are intentionally pretty simple. We tried to create a race that was about the adventure and about the relationship and about this to water and about this incredible coastline that, like, I always forget how lucky we are to live here, right? Like, this is the beginning. Like, we live in the bottom part of paradise that just keeps going. And it's wild coast, and we want to get people into that. So it's really simple. It's any boat without an engine can enter. There's no classes or handicaps because we're bad at math, and it's just a rule. We didn't want to deal with all that. There's a $10,000 first prize. The second prize is a set of steak knives. There's no other prizes. There's also, my other favorite rule is what we call Rule 8. When we implemented Rule 8 when people started getting cute about it. Well, if I have a pedal drive, if I have a human power thing that then charges a battery that goes to an electric motor, you're like, is that cheating? And so we came up with Rule 8. And Rule 8 is if we have to consult, if we think we might have to consult a lawyer to determine whether or not you're disqualified, you're automatically disqualified. Don't get cute. We don't have time for that. Race to Alaska was off for 2 years because, COVID and the border was closed, and it's hard to have a Race to Alaska. I mean, we almost named it Race Through Canada, but we just thought the Canadians might take offense to that. So Race to Alaska has been on hiatus for a while. And this year we came back with a pretty broad set of teams. We had like over 50 teams, which is our biggest number ever, I think. And traditionally we've had 2 waypoints. So the other thing is we don't set race courses. We don't do penalties. Like, you just get there, right? But you have to go, traditionally you had to go through Seymour Narrows. You can't have an engine on board. You can't have support. Those are the other 2 rules. You can stop at a hotel if you want. You can get like a foot massage if you want to. Like, you can, if it's available to all the other racers, it's available to you too. That's kind of the rule. So you have to go through Seymour Narrows. The race is 2 stages. The first race is called the Proving Grounds, which is Port Townsend to Victoria. We start at 5 a.m. on Monday, because why 5 a.m.? Because it's annoying. And also the light's really good for pictures. And usually we line it up with a really ripping tide, so it gets people into the street. We start at 5 a.m. and you have to get from Port Townsend to Victoria without getting rescued within 36 hours. If you get rescued, you disqualify for the second stage. And this year, there was we changed the rule a little bit because there were it was going to blow a gale for 2 days for like 48 hours straight in Strait of Juanafuca. And we looked at these boats. They go from like, the boat that won this year was a Dark Star 44. Dark Star was the name of the boat. It was a Beaker 44. So this big, like, designed by Paul Beaker, who's this like, he does America's Cup boats. Like, he's an amazing designer. Sailed by Olympians who, like, one of them won the race to Alaska and then won the Transpac the same year. So like, they're going to be fine. Like, those guys are going to be fine. But there's like some people who are like, you got a good idea and some duct tape, but like, you're not ready for a gale in the Strait of Juanafuca. So what we did is we said at the captain's meeting, the skipper's meeting, the day before the race, we said, it's supposed to blow a gale for 2 days. Don't leave. We're going to give you an extra 24 hours to get there. So like, don't go. Everyone hear me? Don't go. And then we're just giving you an extra 24 hours. So go when it makes sense. And everyone went. And this was before it got bad. There were several recorded phone calls that race organizers had to have with the Coast Guard around the number of just the level of risk that was happening. And we had 4 rescues, 2 of them that we did. We actually have, this is kind of by design, because what we want is for those who are not ready to go to Alaska, we want to sort of shake them loose from the race when we can still rescue them. Because once you get through Seymour Narrows, there are literally like 4 rescue stations between Seymour Narrows and Ketchikan. So like, help isn't coming in minutes, it might come in hours. So we have to make sure that by the time people get there, they're ready. They really should be there. So in one way of thinking, stage 1 did its work. We had 9 teams exit the race in stage 1. 4 of them had to get rescued, one of them by helicopter. One of them, it was like a 20-foot rowing and sailing craft. Didn't just capsize, it pitch pulled, but it pitch pulled backwards. So it was on a breaking 12-foot wave that they were going into, that they were caught in a rip, but they couldn't get out of this rip. The rip off of Point Wilson is often underestimated. And for a human-powered boat, you can't, once you're in it, you're just in it until you're out of the boat, in this case. So it was pretty gnarly. It was a very gnarly crossing. My favorite part of this race, of stage 1, so we had a team. I had a slide next, but I don't. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk my favorite team. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But stage 1 was brutal, and beware of Point Wilson. The other thing that we did this year for the first time, we always introduce a little rule change just to keep things spicy. This year was the first year of an experiment where we basically took away the first waypoint. So you used to have to go through Seymour Narrows and Bella Bella before you got to Ketchikan. We took away the Seymour Narrows waypoint, which meant if people wanted to and declared and got vetted at a much higher, we're not letting duct tape and bad ideas go the outside of Vancouver Island, but if you wanted to go to the outside of Vancouver Island, 3 teams chose to do that instead of going up the inside. And the top 2 teams, the $10,000 winner, also, we give them the $10,000 in cash that we nail to a piece of firewood, because it's funny and annoying. What we learned about this race is it's got to be just hard enough and a little bit annoying, and then people love it. So this was the team that won, Team Pure and Wild, the Olympians, and on this boat that had a canting keel, and this one just had ballast. They were pumping ballast tanks back and forth. Yeah, they came in, I think it was the second fastest time ever, so 4 days and 6 hours, I think, was the time, all the way to Ketchikan. 3 guys just nailed it. It was an amazing boat. I was actually on the boat that took this picture when they were coming into Ketchikan, and they were doing like 8 knots and 7 knots of wind. It was the goofiest thing, most impressive thing. It was really impressive. I'm not sure we're going to do the outside route. We're doing it again this year just because we might as well do it again. But we'll see if we keep it in the future. I don't know. Because the second big story of the race, maybe the third big story of the race, The inside, was anyone up in like inside of Vancouver Island, like Seymour Narrows area or north of that, or to the Gulf Islands in the summer? Right in early June, there were record high tides that followed a spring of like record rainfall. And there was absolutely just carnage of logs in the water. And the teams that win this thing or sail it competitively go all night, which there is a bravado sort of ethic that has come out where people say like, well, the logs seem to go away at night. It was not true this year. People found logs. This was the boat. This is a Dragon. It's a 36 foot foiling trimaran with some hot stuff BC sailors that, the boat goes really fast. And then it stops really fast. They hit a log going, I think 17 in the middle of the night that you can see this is hit the AMA, it cracked the AMA, and they limped in and they had to retire. And that happened, I think that happened 13 times. Basically, anyone who was competitive and going up the inside, like one of them squeaked through without major damage. And oddly, monohulls do better against logs because they have 1/3 the chance of hitting it with it bounces off usually, right? They're just less eggshelly. This is a very eggshelly boat. Like this is not meant for bashing. This was the picture. So when we opened applications with a compassionate bring your chainsaws. Welcome to the Race to Alaska. Yeah, it was ridiculous. There were whale watch boats who told us they would go up and they were stopping the boat so they could push the logs out of the way just so they could get back to port. It's really incredible. Not in a good way.
Where was that?
That's somewhere in Johnstown Strait. I don't know where exactly. This is my favorite story. So there's a lot of great stories. There was a sister team that rowed the whole way, and they did amazing. They rowed the whole way and then climbed a mountain the next day, just because they had nothing to do. This is my favorite team. This is a team of high school students who they first applied. So we don't just let anyone, but there's an application. There's an anonymous team that like vets the applicants, and then sometimes we're like, here's some homework. Go prove that you can do these things. And these students, they did it on I think it was the Santa Cruz 27, and they fixed it up. They got some help from some former racers. Kind of the racing community in Seattle adopted them. And then they trained all winter, and where they were doing capsize and man overboard drills. They were sailing through the winter, just doing nonstop training runs, and really impressed the hell out of us. Their average age is 16 and a half. And on the first day, stage one, they crossed the starting line and then went to the marina. And they did, and it was so proud of them, and their parents were so relieved. I think it spoke volumes to me about maybe the caliber of thinking that was happening, that the most responsible people in the race at that moment were 16. So we have some work to do on the older folks, but it was a great story. And they got sponsored. It was such a compelling story that Mustang sponsored their team. And now they have to worry about when they hit the dock and catch a can, they're like, no, this is so much better than dealing with college applications. So it was that same thing, when you're out there, you have it's like a singularity of purpose, and they found it. So I might hire them. This is every year we do a promo video. I just thought I'd show you ours. Is my speaker still on, or is it turned off? Might have turned off by now. If you haven't, there's a ton of media on the Race to Alaska. In every race, we have a media gaggle of about 18 people, of writers and filmmakers and photographers that follow the race and flew around. And so if you're interested in the race, there's a backlog of content for it. Okay, I got to click this, and then we'll see if we can hear it. Allegedly, we can.
Good afternoon, this is your captain speaking. Thank you for flying with R2AK. It is our first priority to make the race as safe and comfortable for you as possible. So before we depart, please pay attention to this important safety message. In the R2AK, there are no engines allowed, so please stow it safely at home, buried and encased in concrete for future generations to find. Also make sure the race course is free of support crew, which are likewise not allowed in the R2AK. But do note that both the start and the end points of the race are filled with bears, who will not assist you in any way. Our flight today begins in Port Townsend, Washington, and ends in Ketchikan, Alaska. Along the way there are just 2 waypoints, Victoria and Bella Bella. Please take a moment to find the exits, which won't be marked and will unexpectedly find you when you are at your weakest point. If you wish to fasten yourself to the vessel in rough seas, please clip your sailing harness onto a line secured to the boat and adjust the strap until the fear in your heart subsides. Or maybe it won't subside, and you'll just have to learn to live with it. Smoking and the use of other tobacco products are not advised during the race. When we hit cruising altitude, complimentary beverage service will begin and will be mandatory, incessant, and freezing cold. Take note that there are a number of hazards which may impede you from reaching the finish line in Ketchikan. These include strong currents, rain, bears, hypothermia, gale force winds, and bears. In the rare case of finishing the race first, you will receive a cash prize of $10,000. If you place second, you will receive a set of steak knives. If you place third, you will get nothing. If you place fourth, you will get nothing. If you place fifth, though, you will get absolutely nothing. However, in the unlikely event of a race finish, we do offer complimentary beers. As we come through the cabin to make our final checks, please make sure to sign up for the race by April 15th. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Here is race boss Daniel Evans' personal phone number. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the race to Alaska.
Everything's out of date already because some of you might have heard, long-time race boss, the guy I kind of co-founded the race with, decided that it was more important and glamorous to become a high school shop teacher. So he had his first day yesterday, and he's no longer with us. So we put out a fake obituary about him. That said, he's not dead; he's just dead to us. Anyway, that's the end of my official spiel. I hope I covered the things you wanted me to, and happy to answer questions. I think I ran over, so I don't know how much time we have for questions. Sorry.
I'm a survivor of Outward Bound. So which school were you associated with?
I worked at Anacortes, so it was the Pacific Crest Outbound School, and then I did a little bit of Hurricane Island, and a little bit on the Chesapeake too.
Oh. Yep. Bingo. Cool. What's the big picture of your funding?
If you include some of the things that are 100% like need fundraising, it's about 65% of our budget is fundraised, so philanthropy in one way or another, and 35% is like race fees and wooden boat festivals and hotels and things.
Do you have any insight on the breakwater repair?
The breakwater at Point Hudson is currently under replacement. They're going to do one half this year and the other half next year, and so the marina is closed as of the day after Wooden Boat Festival. I looked out there this morning, and the demolition of the north side is totally done, and we'll start driving past soon. Yeah, I think behind you there's a question too.
One time, Jake, there was some talk about the Northwest Maritime Foundation becoming involved with the operation of Point Hudson.
We did, yeah, that was about 6 years ago. We threw our hat in the ring because they were talking about redeveloping it and doing some really horrible things. So we offered them an alternative to that, and that didn't go through, but they didn't do those horrible things. So it's still good. Your question, yeah.
are we as your state supporting?
Are we as my state?
Yeah. Washington.
There was some state funding that went into the high school. There was some state funding that has gone into there's a heritage capital budget, and we have about 300,000 for some improvements we're doing to the building. That's about it. Usually, no. Usually, it's all private philanthropy. I would invite you to come anytime you like. We're open to the public. Also, the thing that didn't make it into this year's video, there's a link. Is there still like a foot ferry or something that gets to Victoria from Bellingham? I can't remember the status of that anymore. And they shut down the one from Cordes too. Well, it might be harder, but so we raced to Victoria and the race to Alaska, and then there's a restart in Victoria that is worth the trip to go see, because by law, and because it's a float plane airport, there is no sailing allowed in Victoria's Inner Harbor. So all these boats that are meant to go sailing have to human power themselves out of the harbor. And we do a Le Mans start. So they start at what used to be the statue of Captain Cook, but that's not there anymore, in front of the Empress Hotel. And then they run down on the dock, untie, and then mostly crash into each other and bumble as all these racing sailboats pedal themselves out of the harbor. And it's pure joy, because it's so goofy. It's the goofiest looking thing ever. So come to that if you can. Anyway, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, everybody.
Awesome.